Hi guys, sorry I haven't done a video for so long. This month has been truly hectic. So this week I wanted to talk about boundaries, limits and respect. So I've been kind of organised another video, but because I drew some pictures for it and I wanted to try and show them as well. I cannot draw, so look forward to that. It was more of kind of a get people interested, a bit of a humour thing. But I needed like someone to kind of hold the pictures, or a web video kind of hold the thing, and I had one but I lost it. Anyway, back to what I'm talking about today. So guys, I want you to kind of think about the word boundaries, right? Now if you imagine what that word means to you, or what it looks like in a physical sense, like, and I don't mean like how it looks when you're actually putting them in place. I mean, like, if you could think of boundaries as a separate entity, you know, in your life, as a separate thing that could protect you, what would you envision? I'll just give you a moment with that one. Now, for me, I envisioned boundaries as this giant wall, like it was like the Great Wall of China, you know, keep everyone out. But what I didn't prepare for is the fact that because it was so much energy just to put these giant walls in place, because, you know, you had to lift them and move them for different people. And because I was such a people pleaser, I just struggled so badly with even, you know, moving them for people. I would invite people into my inner circle. You know, if you look at the circle of like boundaries, and acquaintances, you know, are supposed to be on the end, and toxic people or strangers are supposed to be on the outside, and then you've got friends, and then family, and then yourself, like in the very middle. And I'd just be like, oh, come on in, you know, learn my life story. Anyway, that wasn't the worst of my mistakes with boundaries. So I envisioned this giant brick wall. And it wasn't until I met a therapist that I worked with who said to me, but how are you supposed to move them? And I was like, well, I have had some difficulty there. And she said, what about you envision them as movable objects? So what about you envision them as security guards? You know, because what is the you know, use of a boundary if it can't protect you at every step of the way? And I mean, obviously we have boundaries that are, you know, further out for people we don't know, or toxic people, and we have ones that are further in for people who we care about and who matter to us and benefit our lives. And you can't move a brick wall quickly. So, and I mean, I had this problem where people would climb over the wall and I'd be like, oh, what do I do now? So then I learnt this thing called limits. So limits are, they work perfectly with boundaries. So you place these boundaries in place. Obviously, that's your expectations of that relationship, and it's about your safety in the end. And limits are, you know, little procedures or unspoken rules, or even spoken rules that you have in this relationship. At the beginning, obviously, they will need to be spoken because you're kind of making a bit of a change. So I found limits were important for people who don't respect your boundaries, or people who don't quite understand that maybe they're stepping over your boundaries. You know, you've said, oh, can you go home? And they're not leaving. And you're thinking, well, how do I get them to leave? I've got things to do, you know, and you don't want to be rude because nobody wants to impact people badly, right? So I found different ways of kind of implementing limits with people. Like I would, at the start of a conversation, not at the end, when they're already getting into their, you know, traumatic situation. At the start of the conversation, I would say, you know, I can't talk for long, or I can only talk for, 10 minutes and then I have to go out. You're not going into details. The importance with limits is not validating yourself and explaining why you need those limits in place, because that person will see weakness, especially if they're a toxic person and they're used to using you. They don't like change. They don't want you to change. When you're explaining limits, you would say something along the lines of, I can't actually do that. I'm busy at that time. And then they say, oh, why? What are you doing? And you say, well, I have an appointment. We all have lives, and that appointment does not need to be anything crucial. But in the end, people will find multiple options to getting their needs met. They don't necessarily need to rely on you all the time. Maybe they could rely on themselves. Sometimes we're not actually benefiting people by promoting their behavior or helping them up every single time they fall. I'm not saying that we shouldn't support other people, but there needs to be boundaries and limits to if we're getting engulfed in somebody else's life or becoming their protector or their decision maker or the person who is their rescuer. If you look at, there's a triangle that goes into kind of different behavioral traits people can fall into. So at the top you've got at the top is the rescuer, right? And then you go down to the victim, and then you go over here to the perpetrator, and then on the outside of that beautiful triangle is the observer. Now it's not to say that if you fall into the perpetrator role that you are a perpetrator or a toxic person. I have fallen into that role, and what I mean by that is a perpetrator could be someone who says, pick that up right now, or you're going to, have those toys removed for half an hour. And a victim could be, oh, why does she never do what I ask? My life is just always so hard, I don't know how this happened and I don't really know how I'm going to get out of it. And then you've got the rescuer, which says, you don't need to pick them up. I know you've had a hard day. I'll do it. And the child or the other person or whatever it is going to go, woohoo, jackpot, because out of each of those, they get a free ride. Because not only have maybe they wanted to affect you emotionally, maybe they wanted to see that they didn't have to do it themselves. Maybe they wanted you to kind of fall into that heap so that you weren't going to keep pressuring them. Maybe they didn't. It's not, it's different to every situation. Okay, so now we talked about different roles, and that's called the drama triangle, by the way. And then we go into the last one. Okay, so now that we've understood what boundaries are, what limits are, you guys can envision them in your own lives, because those beautiful things are very unique to our own lives, because we have our own struggles and our own personalities and our own relationships, and what we value is very different. So our values and beliefs will base the kinds of boundaries that we have, and just remember as well, that comes into the people that you have in your life, the relationships. They are not necessarily going to value the same things as you do. So your sanity, your self-care, that's up to you. We cannot expect somebody else to value that and to give us that time. Sometimes we need to take it, take that time for ourselves and make sure that we're not sitting there saying, why doesn't this person respect me? Well, how about we make sure that we're respecting ourselves by placing boundaries and limits and not letting them disrespect us. You know what I mean? And I totally understand that people can disrespect you and there's nothing you can really do about it. But you can control your reactions or your responses in that moment and how it affects your day or your week or your month, So let's go into respect. Okay, so we've got two versions of respect, obviously. We've got respect of ourselves and respect towards others. And obviously how we would like to be spoken to is a form of respect as well. So the respect of ourselves comes into, like I said, boundaries and limits, self-care, the way that we talk to ourselves, negative thinking, the stinking thinking trap that we can often fall into, which is that victim mindset that we talked about before. So respecting ourselves comes down to whatever you value. So do you value health? Do you value, a positive mindset? Do you value a career that you're really passionate about? What do you value? Think about that, and think about how you're showing yourself respect. Are you driving for the things that you love, or you're settling? Are you doing the things that make you genuinely feel complete or happy inside? Are you showing yourself respect in the sense that you look up in the mirror and you say, you know what, maybe I'm not the best looking person out there, but maybe, just maybe, I'm okay with that, and that takes a long time. I went through a really terrible time many times in my life, but one I can note is a time when I was very, very overweight, and I actually decided that I was going to do something different. So what I did is every day I'd go into the mirror and I'd say, I can't do this whole "you're amazing, you're beautiful" thing. I just didn't feel it. I didn't believe it. It would have been untrue for me to say it, and I would have walked away thinking, oh, you're a liar. So I used to look in the mirror and I used to say, I'm okay. I'm okay. Even if I didn't feel it, I wanted to say, you are ugly. I wanted to say all of those horrible things, and most of the time it was just in my mind. But I wanted to do that because it was normal and it was natural for me to do that. It was a pretty much a ritual habit that I'd formed, and it was a part of my day. So I made some changes, and I made them small, and I told myself I was okay. And I picked one thing I liked about myself, which was my eyes at that time, because they're blue and I liked them. And I pretty much just said that every single day. Sometimes I'd swap it up to, I don't know, maybe your face isn't hideous. But, the thing is that it's important to change behaviors slowly. We're not rocket scientists. It's going to take time. So pick something that you can work with and work on that. If it's self-image, if it's lifestyle, look at what you can do and be realistic, because we need to believe it. If we don't believe it, then it's not going to do anything. Like the old saying, a candle burning underneath the plate that it's sitting on is never actually going to ignite the fire, for there to be anything happening there, no spark. So I had to learn that as well. When it comes to helping people and stuff like that, we can try and make impacts on people. We can try and support them and offer them tools to help themselves. But in the end, we cannot light that wick. They have to do it for themselves. Okay, so the other form of respect is how we want to be treated and how we want to treat others. Now, the thing with boundaries is when I first started implementing boundaries, I found that there was this really disgusting feeling inside my soul after I would do it. And I would second guess myself every step of the way, because I felt it was so unnatural for me. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is because it goes against my character. I acted toxically, all of those things. And you know what? Sometimes I did. And that was because I was learning. But, it's not like I was name calling and things like that. Well, sometimes I did get into that aggressive mindset when I was trying to implement boundaries and they were being ignored, but I eventually learnt when I did actually trust myself. I stopped second guessing myself all the time. I walked through that with communication with the people that I truly cared about. I would communicate with them and say, was that okay that I said that? Is there a better way that I can do that? I'd be quite curious about my approach and how I was coming across and my perception towards others. In that sense, people that I valued, obviously. And then I looked at when I was actually comfortable in myself. I looked at those uncomfortable feelings afterwards, and I realized that it was because it didn't match my character and my values. I felt so uncomfortable and just uneasy because the way that I behaved or the thing that I did, getting defensive or getting angry or putting someone down made me feel, just like old me, and I thought, wow, like I've made a lot of progress. This feeling is actually not because I'm second guessing myself anymore. This feeling is because what I did actually doesn't sit with who I am, and that's a huge insight for me, to be self-aware in that way, and that's what I hope you guys can kind of figure out when people are showing you disrespect, how to kind of react to that, and remember the pause. Remember, you can remove yourself from a situation or remove that person from your life. Boundaries and limits, self-respect, all of that kind of stuff really helps with getting respect in return, and also looking at trying to understand the other person's point of view. So being curious, remaining that way, unless that person is quite toxic, in which case it's probably something that you need to analyze whether that is safe for you to do so. All right, guys, look, I appreciate you guys being so patient and waiting for me to do another video. I have another one organized, but I just need to obviously get the little helper on board. My daughter hurt herself, so just kind of waiting until she's ready to do that. And you guys are gonna laugh so hard when you see my drawings. Anyway, have a great week. Bye, guys.